All right, now we've got to bring in 1010XL's Frank Frangie to try and help us work through what's left of the March Madness tournament. Frank, the women's tournament has been fantastic. I know it's officially wrapped up and in the books, but this is definitely one to remember. Best one I can think of in a long time.
You know what makes it the best one, Jamal, is everyone's talking about it. And I credit Caitlin Clark with that, and Angel Reese with that, and certainly the South Carolina team, who's better than everybody with that. For the first time in a long time, people are talking as much about women's basketball as they are men's, and they really are. Whether people want to admit that or not, they have been. That's a tribute to all of them. It was a fantastic final. I know there was a lot of controversy Friday night about the illegal screen call that got Iowa to the championship game. You asked me, I think it was an illegal screen. People got caught up in the emotion of it, but I think they got the call right. And it was a fantastic game earlier today. South Carolina is the best team in college basketball. They won it. I thought Dawn Staley did something really cool when she tipped her cap to Caitlin Clark and said, thank you for bringing our sport to the forefront. But South Carolina was the best team. I thought it was a great year for women's basketball, Jamal. I really did.
All right, let's switch over to the men's side of the bracket. Frank, how's your bracket looking? Is it still hanging on?
Blown up. There's more red X's on my bracket. I think it was blown up the first weekend, Jamal. I'm like the worst ever at bracket, so mine is dead, I can tell you.
I'm not far from you. I did have Purdue making it, but I had them losing to Iowa State, who didn't make it. I know a lot of brackets out there probably look at least decent because UConn was kind of the favorite going in. I think we had talked about it before the start of it, but here we are now. UConn and Purdue, a pair of 1 seeds, have made it to the championship game. How do you feel going into this one, Frank?
I think it's the two best teams. I told you before, you asked me 3 weeks ago who I thought was going to win it. I said, well, I'm going to go way out on the limb, Jamal, and say I think UConn's going to win it. I still do because I think UConn's got the best team. I think they've got the best team we've seen in a long time. I think they've got the best program, Jamal, we've seen in a long time. So I'm not surprised that they're going to win it. But this is the best two teams. Two big men, a 7'4", going against a 7'2". Two teams that know how to play. Two teams that are in that tournament every year. I know Purdue has lost early. I think it's a fantastic championship game. Sometimes when we don't have enough upsets early, we get disappointed, but that makes for better matchups late. And I think it's the best matchup we could have. I think it's the two best teams in college basketball, and I can't wait to watch it tomorrow.
What would back-to-back championships mean as far as a legacy goes for this UConn team, Frank, at least in your mind?
Well, first of all, the last team to do it wore that logo behind me. Now, they weren't wearing football helmets, but that's the last team to do it. I think it would stamp them as one of the great programs of all time. I think they already are that. They've won a lot of titles, not counting these two back-to-back. If they win, I think they're going to win tomorrow night, by the way, Jamal. I think this team, it's not a coincidence, Jamal, that this team would be the first team to go back-to-back since that Florida team, because they're very much like them. Balanced scoring. They've got 5 guys averaging in double figures. Newton's the leading scorer, but barely. All 5 of those guys are very good. They all average in double figures. And that's how that Florida team was, Jamal, back in when they went back-to-back in 06 and 07. Very balanced. Everybody had a role. They didn't have a particularly deep bench. They just came at you with those first 5, 7, 8 guys, and that's what this UConn team does. I think they're very similar to the Florida team that went back-to-back, and it would stamp them as one of the great programs of all time.
You know, if that Gators team had been out on the court wearing football helmets, it probably would have been a sight to see, at least. I'm just saying, it would have definitely been interesting. Throughout the tournament, there are all these Cinderella teams, Frank. Everybody kind of, you fall in love with a team or a player here or there. I think this year's team was NC State. A lot of people saw them make that run and was hoping maybe they'd make it this far. Was there a player or a moment in this year's tournament? Obviously, we haven't gotten to the championship game yet, but a moment or a player or even a team that stood out to you that was just special?
You know, Jamal, I think we all fell in love with DJ Burns, the big physical center for NC State who looked like an offensive tackle, big physical guy. He was so agile, so great around the basket. His hands are so good. I think he carried them, and I think he's the main reason, not the only, but the main reason that team got so hot through the ACC tournament. They were an 11 seed. It's hard for an 11 seed to get in, and I think they did that in large part because of him. So I think he was the guy that caught our attention. I really tipped my cap to Alabama. Florida buried Alabama twice, scored over 100 against them twice. They weren't a good matchup. Alabama didn't match up well with everybody because they didn't have a good inside game. They weren't very big, but they could outrun you and outscore you. And even against UConn, I thought until about the 10-minute mark, they were playing great basketball. So what they've done with that Alabama program, what Nate Oates has done with that Mark Sears, who's such a good point guard, and I thought DJ Burns, that big physical guy from NC State, they all went to the Final Four, and I thought they deserved that. They got a lot of people's attention, Jamal.
How could you not love DJ Burns? The guy's fantastic. He's just smiling out there on the court while he's dropping buckets. You know who else we all love? We all love Frank Frangie. Love him so much, we're going to make him stick around here in the Sports Zone for another block. We're going to keep him here to talk a little bit about the Jaguars as we start to count down to the NFL draft. That's right around the corner. We'll have more Frank Frangie coming your way when the Sunday Sports Zone continues right after this quick break.